Hey there everybody, welcome back. If you are coming from my first video, you'll know that Khaemwaset is now cold and dead in the ground. Or at least he would be if the archaeologist hadn't blown up his corpse. The point I was really trying to drive home in that first video is that despite all of the newfound controversy, I believe we can all agree he lived a fulfilling life for the 56 years that he was alive. But as also hinted in the first video, Khaemwaset's visage lived on, in the hearts and minds of loved ones for at least a few generations, but coming to a crescendo by the late and Roman periods. Stories of his life were accumulated and embellished, and the mythology of Khaemwaset sprung back to life in the form of someone completely different. His name is Setna, a fictional character living in the world still ruled by Ramesses II. A learned magician that commands actual otherworldly power in forms of texts and amulets. He frolics among the living dead and flirts with all-powerful gods. The composition of these literary works brings us to the Ptolemaic period. The sun had set on an autonomous Egypt, and the might of the Republic had laid their stick in the sand. One of the first instances of Egyptomania was about to grip the globe, bringing Khaemwaset across the Mediterranean.
Pizza time.
From this point on, I will be referring to Khaemwaset as his fictitious counterpart, Setna. Make no mistake, however different these characters are, Khaemwaset's iconic life inspires the Setna storyline, as he finds himself delving into tombs with a keen interest in religious texts and meddling with Egyptian magic.
But are you ready for the Ragnarok?
The character itself, though, is not the stoic prince that we were introduced to in the first video, rather a cartoonish man who finds himself getting in all sorts of trouble, mostly as he disturbs tombs, argues with the dead, steals objects, solicits sexual favors from women, and attracts the scorn of godly figures. Rawr. The Romance of Setna and the Mummies, also known as Setna I, is the most widely known and in antiquity would have been prominently read in both Greece and Rome. In the story, Setna Khaemwase attempts to steal the powerful Book of Thoth from its guardian, the dead priest Naneferkaptah, who he himself perished with his wife and child attempting to steal the very same scroll. Unaware of the spectral safekeeper, Setna plunders tombs in search of this scroll and finally locates it, coming at odds with the dead priest and his equally dead wife. After hearing the harrowing tale of their early death due to the scroll's curse, Setna boldly proclaims that he just doesn't care, and demands to be given the scroll. Naneferkaptah relents, on the condition that Setna bests him in a board game. This is a good place for a tangent, As to what board game they are playing is not entirely clear. Simpson's anthology of Egyptian literature identifies dogs as the playing pieces used. This hints at the game in question being hounds and jackals. I've also read a precursor to checkers being the game of choice. However, given the stakes of this battle, I'm convinced of Senet, the game of passing through the underworld. This adds an extra literary dimension to this duel, being both literally and figuratively a battle between life and death. Setna loses tragically, so the ghost cracks him over the head with the playing board, driving him deep into the earth up to his knees. Setna challenges the hollowed hobbyist again, losing terribly. Earth now all the way up to his waist. Though finally, Lady Luck was on Setna's side, as he valiantly... No, he just lost again. Setna is now just a head peering out of solid stone. Wiser men might point out that the dead have an advantage in a game about death. But I downloaded Senet on Steam and... oh wow, first try. Setna then calls out to his servant, Inaros, and demands that he retrieve his stash of magical amulets, so that he may be freed. After being dressed in his chains, Setna flexes his material wealth so hard that he's freed from the earth enveloping him. After all that, he gets up, dusts himself off, and then grabs the scroll with a certain ease that gives the reader an impression that he could have done that from the very beginning. Though in ancient stories like these, you really have to look between the lines to understand why something seemingly unimportant to the plot was even added. If we dissect this, we can find a hidden and important message, that if you're ever going to plunder a tomb, make sure to at least bring a board game that you are good at playing.
A hit. You have sunk my battleship.
Excellent! Yeah!
Upon returning home, he regales the scroll to just about anyone who would listen. Most objecting, of course, because it is known to be cursed after all. Then, after all that, we next find our hero out and about in Memphis, when he catches a glimpse of the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He sends a servant out to get information on her, the ancient equivalent of Facebook stalking. On the servant's return, he learns that she is Tabalbu, a noble woman and daughter of the high priestess of Bastet. So infatuated with her, he sets off on a romantic quest to pursue her. He wears weights numbering in the thousands of kilos, climbs a huge mountain and vanquishes a beast while blindfolded and covered in gravy. Then, using the height of that beast, he parachutes down the mountain, landing in a magnificent front flip. I hope none of you believe that. Have you forgotten that he can't even win a board game? No, what he actually does is hide behind a bush, while he has his servant deliver a message to her, detailing that if she doesn't sleep with him, that he will sexually assault her and throw her body in a river. The guy worked with colossal obelisks his whole life, and I suppose that was his way of compensating for something. Tabalbu disregards the message and walks away without any care of being threatened with all kinds of violence against her. Setna is distressed, goes back home and contemplates how he is going to get laid. His next master plan involves just totally stalking her. He takes a ship down to the Temple of Bastet, as it was known that she was the daughter of the high priestess there. Strolling in, he finds her, but again she is not perturbed, probably used to this kind of courtship method. Setna again reiterates his intentions. She finally caves in, and hands him food and drink as she invites him into her room to talk terms. Setna happily scoffs down cheese and bread and drinks his share. The girl then states, "I will sleep with you, but hey, I heard your kids are downstairs." Setna, again proving to be absent-minded, sends for them to be brought upstairs. so they can witness him barter for punani? The girl gives an ultimatum. He can totally get some if he has his children killed and thrown out the window. Without even the slightest contemplation, he agrees.
I love you, Daddy. Fuck off, Hitler.
The text then visually describes how teams of cats and dogs ravage the corpses. A grisly detail for us, but an incredible taboo in ancient Egypt. With that detail being met, she agrees on the terms. But first they need to go to the treasury, so Setna can bed her on pristine ivory, because of course he does. They make it to the bedchambers, lay down, and Setna goes to cop a feel when she just straight up screams in his ear, like, ow. Setna wakes up completely naked, barring what could possibly be a pot on his Johnson. The lady had disappeared.
I'm taking your clothes.
No, that's my only suit. It cost me $350. I got it in Mo Ginsburg.
Bye, George.
Wait, you can't just leave me here. Will I see you again?
Defeated and still naked, he walks home. His father Ramesses II strolls by conveniently and reminds him that just because he is the son of a pharaoh does not mean he can walk around the arid desert in the nude. Setna relents and informs his father that he had his children killed for some brief release, but ultimately he was dumped because girls never like nice guys. His father, with a puzzled expression, states his children are still alive and they are out looking for him. Setna then goes to greet them, but the story doesn't specify that he gets changed back into clothes, so let's all just visualize him walking in the hot arid sun to greet his children, still completely in the nude. It becomes obvious to the Egyptian reader at this point that Setna was cursed by the scroll, and that Tabaubu was a godly figure out to teach him a lesson. The food and drink he was offered and consumed was a nod to Egyptian love magic, which explains why he was incredibly impressionable for a time.
Yeah, right. I'm not as stupid as I look.
Learning his lesson, Setna agrees to return the scroll to the Wraith of Recreation. On his return visit, they have a nice conversation. He even takes him to where his wife and child died, which was a lovely stroll, I am sure. This particular page, where the story ends, is a direct inspiration for the Boris Karloff monster cult classic, The Mummy, wherein the mummy leads excavators to where his deceased lover is buried. A fun tidbit, but I'm sure we would have all appreciated recreating Setna's brazen cheeks as he strolled through the desert even more. This is where our story ends. Other Setna stories feature his son as more of the protagonist, wielding godly and magical powers. Setna goes on a few more adventures with his son, one of those featuring the underworld to the likeness of Dante's Inferno, where his son takes the role of a Virgil-type character, and Setna that of Dante himself. The life and legend of Khaemwaset is a fun one, with just the right amount of accomplishment, controversy, and mythology. A man with virtue held in great esteem in the ancient age, and a mindset towards conservation and repair many of us can still learn from and be entertained by in modernity. For now, this is all I will cover on the topic of Khaemwaset. If you want to stay updated on future videos delving into history, anthropology, culture and more, please consider subscribing and leaving a like so I can get that hit of sweet dopamine. Thanks!
Could you kindly stop that?